All right, thank you all for joining. We are going to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our virtual Tech on Tap event. My name is John Bandek. I am the Business Outreach Liaison for the City of Glendale's Economic Development Division. Before I begin, I would like to mention that today's meeting is being recorded and will be published on our website, GlendaleTechWeek.com. Today is a special day because we get to have a sneak peek at 4 CHLA KidsX brightest startups who are finding innovative ways to tackle long-time pediatric healthcare problems. These startups are Cast21, Pieces, Vitals, and Tombot. For those of you who do not know, the Children's Hospital Los Angeles KidsX Digital Health Accelerator is one of 2 tech accelerators supported by the City of Glendale in California. KidsX brings together the top children's hospitals and talented digital health companies to build, test, and deploy software solutions to make pediatric care exceptionally effective, safe, and convenient for children and families. Join me in welcoming Kate Berman, Project Manager, and Ali Arnott, Innovation Consultant at KidsX, who will provide more information about KidsX and get us started with the pitches. Ali, Kate, take it away.
I'll start. Hi, I'm Kate, as mentioned, Program Manager of KidsX, a Glendale Accelerator program, and we can't wait to introduce you to the 4 pediatric startups that are going to share more about their solutions. I'll let Ali briefly introduce herself, and then I'll share a little bit more about KidsX, the Glendale Accelerator, and then we'll dive right into the pitches.
Hi, just quickly, I'm Ali, yes, a KidsX team member. Very grateful that we have the support of Glendale, City of Glendale, and excited to hear more from all of our teams pitching today.
Awesome. So just a little bit about KidsX really briefly. KidsX is an international consortium of pediatric hospitals focused on improving pediatric health innovation through collaboration. So we have a reverse pitch model where we ask our pediatric stakeholders what are the top problems that they're looking to solve at their health systems and in their communities. And then we put that call out to the startup community, asking who can solve those problems. And through vetting and evaluating those solutions, we pick companies that meet the needs of our pediatric members. And then we have a multi-week, it was fully virtual last year, and we'll see for year 2, program that connects pediatric innovators with leading pediatric organizations to support innovation and investment in solutions improving children's health at scale. So we also came up with a few different core values this year. We prioritize listening deeply, listening to, caring about, and helping each other and the patients and families we serve. Having courage, so making sure we're working with entrepreneurs and leaders who are courageous and bold in their pursuit to transform care. Dreaming big, reimagining how we can improve the health of our children and families. Inclusivity, being intentional about seeking out and including different types of thought, people, and perspectives. Being scrappy and frugal, figuring out how to do more with less, and finding creative ways to solve problems quickly. And of course, staying curious, asking questions, and staying committing to improving and iterating. So with that, I'm going to put my email in the chat, and Ali can as well. If you have questions afterwards about how to join KidsX as a pediatric organization, how to apply to KidsX as a startup, how to support KidsX as an investor or payer, or how to participate in more Glendale community events and CHLA KidsX events, reach out to us and visit our website, and we will chat more. But I know what you all came for is to hear from the 4 amazing entrepreneurs that we have on this call. So with that, I'm going to, actually really quick, some housekeeping. If you have questions throughout the session, feel free to put them in the chat. We're going to have each company pitch for 8 minutes, and then we'll give chance for, verbal Q&A after that. And then at the end, of course, after everybody pitches, there'll be an opportunity for you to network more with the companies and ask us questions about Glendale initiatives as well as KidsX initiatives. So don't be shy to use the chat. That's what it's there for. And then with that, we will get started. So our first company up today is Cast21, who will present their unique breathable and waterproof casts and braces for broken bones. So if Ashley, you could introduce yourself and share your screen. I'll let you take it away.
Perfect, Kate, thank you so much. Let me full screen here. Can everybody see?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having us here. I'm really excited to share about how we are revolutionizing an antiquated technology in the orthopedic space. I'm Ashley Moy, and at Cast 21, we've developed these waterproof alternatives to casts and braces to decrease medical frustrations and to elevate the patient experience. Our co-founder, Jason, has actually been in over 60 casts and braces in his lifetime. So he's very intimately familiar with all of the hardships that come with traditional antiquated casting, that being fiberglass or plaster. These are itchy, sweaty, smelly because they keep heat, sweat, moisture against the patient's body, which is a perfect breeding ground for bacteria. This isn't just a discomfort issue, but it also has a lot of negative downstream effects, both on a financial side and negative comorbidities or other negative clinical implications downstream as well. So we've developed a superior solution to bone care, an opportunity to present a device that is waterproof, breathable, and lightweight for the patient, but also more efficient and safer for the clinicians to use. This product is already overcome its FDA and COFEPRIS medical hurdles, and we're overcoming soon our Health Canada hurdles as well as we continue to expand. Our product works a little bit differently than the traditional cast or brace, but still takes advantage of the workflows that a lot of clinicians are familiar with. Our product starts as a flexible hollow sleeve that can slide on over the patient's limb, much like you would put on a glove. Then there's an external pack of liquid that you connect to the sleeve, where the liquid transfers from the pack into the sleeve, where it hardens into that rigid structure. We've created the only commercial product that is keeping the patient's experience and the doctor and clinical experience in mind. Our product, as I mentioned, is comfortable for the patients, but it's also up to 6 times more efficient than the standard of care, and it can be used without any access to modern day luxuries. We're the only product that can do that and achieve the rigidity and moldability that we do have. This means that the product can be applied in the doctor's office, which is tradition, but also on the sidelines in developing nations, in disaster areas, and for military purposes. We started our technology testing it with the upper extremity in adults, and now we're quickly expanding out of that. Our technology today is for upper extremity or arms and wrists, but we're really excited about the possibility of our technology truly being a platform for other augmented therapies as well, and to be used in other industries, for example, in sports bracing, products for other species, and even as platforms for things like bone stimulation or augmented muscle therapies. Of course, healthcare, everybody wants to know who's paying for this. And the arrows here show the flow of money. So we sell products to the doctors. We're not a B2C company, even though we do have a lot of people requesting our product on the patient side. So after the doctor places the product, they can either bill the patient out of pocket or go through the insurance route. And we do have payers participating and reimbursing for our product. And it's interesting also to note that physicians are, even though the product is being covered and paid for, physicians are still asking some of their patients to pay out of pocket. We're really excited that we were able to design, validate, and commercialize a medical device all in our first 3 years. So really excited about that. We participated in a number of accelerators. We have an ongoing clinical investigation with the University of Tennessee. We commercially launched just a little while ago now, and we're really excited for the growth that we're seeing, almost triple growth year over year right now. At the close of the last quarter, between double and triple growth, and we're adding a new clinic less than every 5 days. So very excited about that. And people who try our product love it. We have a fantastic team. We actually have an all minority team, which is kind of unique for us in the STEM field. And altogether, this is our 5th startup that we've either co-founded or worked for a venture-backed company as well. We have experience designing, developing, and selling way different products, not just medical devices, all in the healthcare space as well. Thank you so much for having us here. We have a couple of opportunities if you'd like to get to know us better or participate. We're always looking to help more patients in more areas, and we're going to focus now on California for these next few quarters. So if you know any orthopedic specialists or sports medicine physicians who may be interested in this technology, we'd love to connect and hear from them. We're also on social media on all of the platforms at Cast21Official. And we're building out our team, our core team in marketing and innovation, as well as our advisory teams and our advisory boards in commercialization and clinical research and product design. Thank you so much. I'd be happy to field any questions at this time.
Thanks, Ashley. Turning it over to the audience, if you have any questions. I can also, you can either say them out loud or put them in the chat. I have a question for you, Ashley. What would you say is the biggest, I guess, or like the most common type of feedback you get from the kids and the parents that are using your solution?
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. It's probably the most common thing that we have people say. The whole process is just so visually engaging. You know, it starts as, I have one here, this flexible hollow sleeve. You can make it as tiny as your fist. And then when it's on the patient, you can see the liquid go through that phase change. And it's such a positive experience for those patients, especially in the pediatric space where we see the most amount and most diverse amount of these types of fractures. And they get to pick their favorite color and they can still sign it with a Sharpie. I have one here decorated. I drew some flowers on it. So that's been a really uplifting and humbling part of our experience, getting that positive feedback from them.
That's amazing. I remember, knock on wood that this doesn't happen, that I wanted to break my arm as a kid because I thought it was like so cool that people got to have somebody write for them and take their homework. So this is such a better way to go about it for kids that actually are struggling with that. We have a question in the chat. What has been your biggest struggle as a founder breaking into the pediatric space?
I don't think this is something unique to us, but when we were breaking into the pediatric space, it's a very conservative, we found it to be a very conservative space. People don't want you testing on their children. Doctors don't want to necessarily try very new and avant-garde technologies on minors. So being able to demonstrate the safety and efficacy of our product and go for low risk cases were the ways that we were able to get around that.
And we have a question. Are you conducting research and a study on the kids that are receiving these casts compared to the healing of a typical cast? And if so, what is your approach?
So we have a academic clinical approach to collecting clinical data in those data sets. And then we do the same thing on an anonymous survey that we're able to get some of the more qualitative information back. So our approach to that second one, because we can be a little bit more creative outside those confines and keeping things from a marketing perspective only, we have online and paper forms that we have people use to fill out. We have a phone line that people can call to give their post-market survey feedback, as well as what we call it. So we're not then going into the patient records or pulling any kinds of X-ray data or anything like that with that method. And otherwise, we use the standard, IRB process and finding a PI and everything else. Have you found that your product heals? So we don't claim that our product heals fractures faster. However, with our product, we do have increased dexterity, and our product has been used, as I mentioned a little earlier, to support some other therapies like bone stimulation. So for patients that have not been able to have what's called a bone union, and when your bone fractures and actually never comes apart, we've had people use specifically our technology in conjunction with others in order to make that happen. So we don't publish any of that data. Other people have done it, and I can share that anecdotally, but that would be an example of us collecting post-market data to be able to share that information.
In your product roadmap, do you envision this type of cast being applicable to other parts of the body as well, or in expanding on that, or is it mainly working for that region, the arm region?
We absolutely see this technology going to the other body parts. We're really excited to be launching a couple of new products. Stay tuned. Taking advantage of these, again, types of technologies that can be used without any modern day luxuries and still are able to clinically provide the exact same things that the existing technologies do. So we're really excited about that. We decided to focus on this particular type of geometry and body space because it's so commonly fractured across all the age groups. And it's the easiest geometry because there's no right angles or weight bearing. So we wanted to demonstrate a proof of concept here first.
That's smart. And then what advice can you share with other startup founders who are just starting out in their entrepreneurial journey in pediatrics?
I think one of the best things about being an entrepreneur is that you get to define your success. And that's something that I didn't know when I first started my company. I thought, oh, I have to have the same growth profile as some of these public companies that have been around forever. And if I don't, then I'm a failure. So realizing that my team and I can control what success looks like and what our goals are, and not letting too many outside influences push on that. I think it would really help new entrepreneurs be in a good headspace and stay confident and aggressive moving through their process.
And then how do you remove the cast? Does it need special process for disposal?
So the product is removed with clinical shears, no scary cast saw, and we teach the medical professionals a specific cutting pattern to be able to remove the product, again, without any specialized equipment or anything that needs to be plugged in.
And are there benefits from a medical standpoint to having access to the arm where the cast is as opposed to a solid form?
In several cases, yes. For example, let's say you are post-surgical or you fell and you need to continue to monitor a wound. Currently, if you have a cut under your cast, the only way to tell if it's been infected is if you have secondary symptoms like pus oozing out the end of your cast or you get a fever. So for those cases, it's really great to be able to monitor your skin.
And then you also mentioned just from a preventative standpoint, like with the moisture wicking and the bacteria, even prevention from the get-go, that would help alleviate that as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. What's really nice about this windowed product is that it has all this space for water egress. There have been a couple of organizations that have tried to address the waterproof aspect of the product by putting different types of woven synthetic fabrics underneath the product. But this actually traps a lot of heat, or I should say traps a lot of dirt within those synthetic woven materials that go underneath, and traps the water in there as well. So that doesn't do anything to improve skin conditions, unfortunately.
That's super helpful. And then I think we have maybe 2 more minutes if anybody has any last questions before we switch to the next one. But I guess I would just ask, in terms of your product and iteration journey, could you just explain a little bit how you mapped out like from this ideation to actually building something that was meeting your goals, like what that looks like for you and not trying to do everything all at once?
We have a really fantastic team. I think that was very helpful for us. So we started our process from a patient need, and then we went out and did a bunch of customer discovery. We took advantage of the National Science Foundation I-Core program to figure out not just what the patient needs, but what do all the stakeholders in the ecosystem really need out of a new system. And then we put together our design matrix for that, and we worked on different design applications and processes to be able to achieve those things. Then you balance those against risks and costs and manufacturing, and just going through that step-by-step process to ensure at the end you have a high quality and reliable product.
Awesome. Sounds like you have a great design thinking methodology. Okay, and then we've got 3 quick questions. Can your product prevent fat fracture?
I can't claim that it does prevent fracture. I can't make any claims to that, but I could see based on the mechanical performance of our product, how it's designed to take force and load and distribute it in a way that doesn't injure the body when it is confronted with a type of blunt force. So I'll let you interpret that data how you want to stay legal.
And then any allergic reactions to the material during your study?
None so far reported. And what's really nice about the material that we're using is it's actually implantable grade material, even though you're wearing it on the outside of your body.
And then lastly, can you share how much money you've raised and what source it came from?
We raised $2.5 million from direct investments, so those being venture capitalists, family office, angel investors. And then we had between $100,000 and $200,000 in private and public grants.
Did that answer your question, Tom? Perfect. Awesome. Great. Well, we are at time to move to the next presenter, but continue to ask any questions for Ashley in the chat. And thanks so much, Ashley, for being a part of this Tech on Tap event.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so our next presenter is Shreya Gupta from Pieces. They'll feature their cloud-based artificial intelligence that is set to revolutionize healthcare management and workflows. So I'll let Shreya take it away.
Thank you. All right, let's get the screen share going. You see my screen okay? All right, perfect.
Yes, it is.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shreya Gupta. I am the Clinical Operations Director here at Pieces Technologies, and I am very excited to speak to you all today. So let's get started. So there's nothing worse than being stuck in a hospital, right? Especially when you're ready to get home. And on average, there's about 36.5 million hospital admissions per year. And I think that's a statistic we're all pretty familiar with. But I think something that sometimes or at least to me was shocking, was that 14% of those hospital days are actually made up of those patients that are there for excess length of stay. So they're there longer than they should be. And those patients actually comprise about $20 billion of expenditures on a healthcare system. So what is actually causing them to stay that much longer? There's a whole wide variety of reasons, right? It could be everything from fragmented care management. We're looking at delays in testing or procedures. There's logistics for discharges. And of course, there's clinically or patient-specific reasons why there might be delays in discharge. And as we know, the longer you stay in a hospital, the higher the risk there is for a hospital-acquired infection. So how do we address this at Pieces? So what we've done is Pieces takes artificial intelligence and intuitive integrated workflows for clinicians and nurses, as well as care managers, to prioritize their tasks and then allocate their resources to really help patients get out as soon as they're medically appropriate to leave the hospital. And because when you're ready to go home, it is so painful to be sitting in that hospital bed every minute, every hour. So that's really what we're focused on, is how do we do this efficiently and effectively? So how do we really do this, right? So let's dive in a little deeper. So we use our software uses, like I mentioned, natural language processing, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. And this combination helps our care managers understand who is most likely to discharge, who to prioritize for discharge, and how to do that efficiently. So Pieces can actually do a lot of really cool stuff. It can go through and read the doctor's notes. It can analyze the risk. It can alert the staff about specific things to be on lookout for. And the best part is that the software actually integrates within your workflows, so within your EMRs. Because I think something else that we all recognize is it's hard to leave the clinical EMR and then go into another portal. It's harder to get folks to adapt to it, and it's harder just to use overall. So that's something that we recognize as well, and we make sure we integrate within that workflow. What we're looking at right now on the screen is our reducing length of stay module as a standalone, but you'll recognize it's very similar to a patient work list. And right now, what our reducing length of stay module does is that it identifies and prioritizes any actionable bottlenecks that might be creating barriers for patients that might be ready for discharge. So the AI is actually going through, surfacing barriers across your entire patient population to help care teams really prioritize of these patients who's ready for discharge today, maybe tomorrow, and then help them understand which of those barriers need to be addressed right now. And the best part of all of this is that no one has to go through the chart, read all the patient notes, the care notes, physician notes, none of that. It's being housed and being delivered to the care teams in one spot at our pieces work list here. So risk is being actually mitigated and hopefully alerted to in real time so they can be addressed prior to discharge and earlier in the patient journey. But it doesn't stop right there. Once these barriers and potential needs are surfaced, Pieces really wants to make sure that the patients get connected to the resources in their community to make sure that they really are truly addressed and are connected to the right resources, like I mentioned. So Pieces Connect actually provides a referral directory and a closed loop system for those various social determinants of health needs. And this works outside of the hospital walls across the care continuum. So I think this is a lot of information, but it's hard to sometimes put it together. So I thought we could walk through a patient use case. So let's kick that off real quick. So Brandon is our patient today. He's a 12-year-old boy. He's been in the hospital for 4 days due to sickle cell pain crisis and has been in severe pain as well as experiencing acute chest syndrome requiring oxygen support. His care plan currently includes a follow-up with pulmonology, pain management, and a sickle cell clinic visit. In addition, it's noted that he has transportation concerns, which need to be addressed for successful post-hospitalization care. So as you can see, as I was talking about this, disposition note has been highlighting using our natural language processing with certain things being flagged for our Pieces module. So pharmacy support might be needed, outpatient follow-up support might be needed, as well as a transportation need. So Pieces is taking all of this into consideration, making sure that our discharge planner knows that his family may need a referral to a transportation service to ensure he can get the recovery plan that he can recover as planned. So as the discharge planner then goes ahead and makes that referral, they're able to use our Pieces Connect platform, like I mentioned earlier, to find that transportation service near Brandon that's available to take on a new client and can meet all of his needs. So they can go ahead, they'll put in that referral for him. And again, another great part of this is that if you see at the bottom right-hand side, it says accepted. So the discharge planner is now able to see that Brandon and his family have been accepted for this transportation need. And when he leaves the hospital, there is a way for him to get to, well, leave the hospital, but also get to his follow-up appointments. So all of this I know sounds great in theory, right? But the question we get a lot of times is, how do we know this actually works? So I wanted to share a little bit about our success stories. So one of our clients that have implemented our reducing length of stay module, these are some of the results that they have seen. So they've seen an 88% reduction in their overall access length of stay, which also translates into about $5.5 million in cost savings per year. And all of that really results into 300 days in increased capacity. So at the end of the day, you're able to see more patients and provide care that they truly need. In addition to that, by being connected to the community prior to discharge or upon discharge, what we're starting to see is lower readmission rates as well as lower ED utilization, and therefore an increase in community connections. So we definitely are seeing the impact that we want to drive towards. And I can, we can spend more time going through the data, our research studies, our trends, our analytics. We have a whole data science team that would love to spend some time doing that. But instead, what I want to end on today is that Pieces is here to make sure you can get the most out of your EMRs, so that way patients are able to get the most out of their days. So if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, seeing how we can align, I'll leave my contact information in the chat box, or you can also always visit our website at piecestech.com. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shreya. I will turn it over to the audience again for questions. And again, feel free to use the chat or share verbally. John just shared Pieces website in the chat as well. So you can check them out for more information. But I'll pause for 1 minute before I dive in with some questions. Looking at the audience. What has been one of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome as an innovator in a very risk-averse market with your solution?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think one of the things, and while I am not the CEO and founder, but we do talk to our clients about this all the time. It's really understanding what is the market. I think what Ashley was saying earlier of understanding the goal, understanding and defining your success. We've had a lot of conversations of, is this what we really want to do? Is this really what our company's mission is? And having that at the forefront of when we do have those challenges faced of, well, could you do this? What about this? Have you thought about this? I mean, couldn't you? So when those conversations come up, a lot of times we have to take a step back and ask that question as well of, is this really our mission? Is this what we're trying to do? So that's one of those things. But I would also add to that is really being nimble enough to understand the market. As we know with the pandemic, everyone is very hyper-focused on social determinants of health, and that's wonderful. It deserves it. But it's also a question of how do you do it right? How do you do it effectively? So again, as an organization, we've always taken a moment to step back and say, how is this going to impact the community, the populations we really want to impact? So it's working with our partners on the ground all the way up to that leadership level.
That's really helpful. Ash, I wanted to just highlight what you mentioned about understanding the market and understanding your goals and not kind of getting overwhelmed or overly persuaded by the whim ideas or suggestions of, I'm sure, people who are considered experts in the space. So I think that that's a gift and challenge of any good entrepreneur like the Pieces team, where you can, listen deeply to what's going on and the advice of others, while also staying true and staying on track to your goals and what you, intuitively and in an educated way know what's best for your company. So I think I've been really impressed by your ability to do that. Okay, we have 2 questions that just came in. So, great outcomes. Which organizations have been using your technology in your tests, and how are you monetizing your product and service?
Yeah, absolutely. So primarily, as you can tell, we're working with health systems. We work with both adult and pediatric populations. What I will say is when we are testing new models, we obviously are testing our algorithms with those subset of cohorts. So our pediatric models we tested and co-developed actually two of them, with Children's Hospital here in Dallas. So they've been great partners with us to really understand what we need to really fine tune in our understanding and algorithms. Just like Kate was saying, they are the clinical experts, and we do bring the data science to the table, but that's where we start in terms of testing. Other than that, our clients range from health systems to community-based organizations, as well as some medical device companies that we're working with currently from a clinical trials perspective, also condition specific. If you're trying to detect, who might be at risk for an urgent start for dialysis, that is something that we can help with. So we definitely have some wide range of use cases. It's just been a minute for us to understand what makes the most sense and what's the biggest impact. In terms of monetizing, we are a SaaS service, so working with the health systems or whatever the group may be, and we do have a modular approach. So I wish I could give you a little more detail there, but I can definitely talk to you more about it offline.
Great. And then we have another one, great presentation. Which departments seem to be most and least engaged with your tool, and have you worked on workflows between them?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So speaking specifically to our readmission product or our reduction in length of stay product, I think, our end users are traditionally the care management team or the nurse care management team, because they are the ones, I would say, quarterbacking the discharge process. The rest of the care team, whether it's the nurse or the physician, PT, OT, pharmacy, they do get involved, but in terms of using the product, they are not our traditional users. We have been doing some testing to better understand, how would they use it? What is the best way to get them to use it? User adaptability, like I mentioned, I think the thing that we've figured out, or most of us have figured out, is if it's integrated in their EMR workflows, it's going to be great. If it's not, it's definitely harder to do. There are instances where, the tool doesn't have to be integrated. So it's just understanding the needs of the organization. Something that we have found successful is doing something we called a readiness assessment or an operational assessment before an implementation. And what we do there is we take the time to talk to frontline users from all different disciplines to understand what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So when we do have that implementation, technical and operational, not only is it easier to get buy-in, but I think from the adaptability side, it's easier for them to understand why we're doing what we're doing, and then we can understand where do we fit into the puzzle that is their process. So I hope that answers your question.
And just from a time perspective, there is another question. Do you have any established competitors in this arena? But if you wouldn't mind answering that one in the chat, and we can introduce our next presenter. So our third presenter of the day is Werner from Vitals, and Vitals will present their innovative wearable technology that allows medical professionals to monitor patient vitals from anywhere. So excited to turn it over to Werner. And yeah, again, Shreya, if you wouldn't mind answering the competitor's question in the chat.
Thanks, Kate. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. So I'm the co-founder of Vitals, as Kate mentions, also the CEO. I'm also the co-founder of this little boy, MJ, who suffered from febrile seizures when he was younger, which basically meant that my wife and I had to take turns to check him or check his temperature when he was sick, to try and avoid these seizures from happening. And in the end, after trying some other wearable devices and different methods, we realized that the only way to get there was to try and develop our own. And through a lot of discussions with clinicians, we then realized that parents wouldn't be the best market for us. So we pivoted the company, which we then started to a hospital-focused device. So we added a bunch of functionality and started developing, in theory, the technology. One of the main reasons that we decided to focus on hospitals is that, or one of the many reasons, that 75% of all adverse events and preventable deaths in hospitals occur outside the ICU in areas in the hospital where patients are supposed to be not that sick, but they don't get the level of care that they receive in the ICU. So we developed this wearable. This is what it looks like at the moment. You'll see it's very low profile, flexible in the middle. It monitors SpO2, respiration rate, body temperature, and pulse rate. So we collect it using an optical sensor, basically meaning that we shine a light or lights into the body, and we get feedback from the blood, and then we interpret those and determine the readings. Our devices are waterproof, very unobtrusive. So they're worn on the chest. So if I can show you, they're worn on the chest like that. The reason for the armpit or extension into the armpit is for body temperature. And they're unobtrusive, they're worn on the skin, under the clothing. So we've never had a patient to try to pull it off, especially that's a big advantage for clinicians and nurses in the pediatric population, especially. The devices are waterproof, as I mentioned, and they're also disposable. The reason for that is it saves a lot of time for clinicians and nurses or clinical staff if they don't have to recharge technology and if they don't have to sterilize anything. And it reduces the risk of cross-contamination between patients as well. Because what typically happens is a nurse would round on patients. They usually have between 6 and 8 patients to look after during a shift. And they have to go to a patient, monitor their vital signs, write them down, sterilize the equipment and move to the next patient. And this happens throughout the day and night. So sometimes they have to wake patients up to do that. And what often happens is between patients, because nurses are chronically overworked, they don't have time for that sterilization process. So they skip that to get to all their patients and get to the rest of their work. And then you get cross-contamination, which often means the whole floor has to be closed, almost torched to clean it and then open back up. So there's a big risk of, or legal risk to the hospital, but also risk of loss of income. And then our device is clinically accurate. So it's been FDA cleared for ages 2 and older. So just to give you a quick overview, our wearable is worn by a patient. It connects to, it communicates using Bluetooth. So it needs to connect to something in the middle to get the data to the cloud. We have a base station, which it's a little box that our devices connect to, that receives the Bluetooth data using Bluetooth and then streams it to the cloud. We can also connect to the hospital's infrastructure. So any router that can receive Bluetooth, we can integrate with. And then the third option is a mobile app that we have that runs on Android or iOS. And that's typically for patients sent home, but the app turns their phone into a base station. The way we've developed this technology is that our wearable can be a standalone product. So we don't force a hospital to adopt any of our hardware or software other than the wearable. And this helps. This is kind of different to everyone else in the industry. It helps with faster adoption, and hospitals don't want to learn another software platform. It's too much for them to take on. So we've gotten a lot of feedback, good feedback, because we developed it like that. And then from the cloud, the data can either be sent to the hospital's cloud or server, on premises or off premises, doesn't matter, or our cloud. And if it's ours, we stream it to their EMR, which we integrate with, or we can stream it directly through the hardware to their EMR. So the EMR integration, currently we're doing that through aggregator, like I forgot the name. Anyway, will come back to me. Who's integrated into these EMRs already? So we integrate into their platform, and they switch us on for the specific hospital. Our team, my background's in business. I've had one successful exit with the Hopper, which is a travel company. Louise's background is in accounting and operations. Mohammed, biomedical engineer. Amin and Philip, both technical engineers, so hardware engineers, and engineers on the accounting side. On our advisory board, we've really worked hard to get proper or good people with clinical experience into the company. So Stephen Meyer was the former president and CEO of Welch Allen. John Dring was with Vital Connect, who is kind of a competitor. They monitor with EKG, but it's still a wearable. And then Dr. Serbach, Minduk was with Fitbit before, and then Dr. Serbach, Dr. Paul Morse, both clinical advisors. In terms of our business model, so we have two. Initially, we have a device. We focus on device sales only. So it's because the devices are disposable. We call it a single-use per patient stay device. So they last anywhere from 5 days to 14 at the moment. Which, if I can explain a little bit further, 5 days if we monitor continuously, so every second. But the volume of data that we get off the device is crazy. So hospitals typically want us to monitor patients every 2 hours or every hour. So then that extends the battery life. And then we go into the arena of adhesive lifespan. So if it's not battery, it's adhesive. And our adhesives have been tested anywhere from 11 to 14 days wear time, depending on activity of the patient, skin type. Those all have an effect on it. But consistently with our own wear testing, and I don't behave like a patient. I have 3 boys now, so I'm busy. We get up to 14 days wear in our devices. And then the second model that we're kind of morphing into is a data company. So the data we collect, time series patient data, doesn't exist currently reliably, or reliable sets of time series data. So there is a demand for that type of data that we're collecting, but we're also looking at developing an AI-based analytics software that can start providing predictions to clinical staff and predict deterioration. And then, our focus area. So there are many use cases, and we've been approached from the ED to patients receiving chemo, to patients with single ventricle patients. But the strongest use case for us that always comes through from all the hospitals we work with or we talk to is post-operative. So that could be recovery in the hospital, but also, which is growing rapidly now, is hospital at home. So lower acuity patients recovering at home. So that helps with earlier discharge, reductions in length of stay, obviously, and reductions in readmissions if they're monitored at home. And our device indicates fever, for example. It could be an infection, and that can be treated early on and at the minimal cost. In terms of what makes us unique, so because of the technology we have in the device, the FDA has cleared us for patients 2 years and older, and we were working on below 2 as well to get a clearance for that. The reason for that is that wearable EKG sensors are not as accurate as the optics that we use. So FDA typically clears EKG wearables at 18 plus. So that's a unique to our device. The other unique part of it is that we incorporate all these readings into a single device, where the majority of other companies have devices 2 or more to monitor what we do with 1. And then an advantage of that is that we can later add other metrics like blood volume or blood pressure. With the same device, we don't have to add a separate one to do that. So far, we've raised about $3 million. FDA cleared, patents filed, everything's ready. We are in commercialization at the moment. We've ran studies with Texas Children's Hospital, UPenn, and St. Mary's in New York. And we're in discussions with a bunch of other hospitals. 8 of them actively communicating with us are from the KidsX program. So that's kudos to the KidsX. So quickly, just our commercialization focus is hospitals, but they are slower than normal companies. So we are also focusing on integrations with hospital-at-home companies or providers who work with hospitals. But these companies are much faster in adoption. So that's kind of the winner for us, or the biggest focus for us at the moment. And then we're also looking at distributors across the continental US to distribute our product. We're raising a $2 million seed round, or Series Seed. So it's an equity, equity round. And it's at a 30 million pre-money valuation. So we're about 50% subscribed for that round. And that's us. Thank you for listening. Any questions? I'll put my contact info in the chat as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Werner. So we got, if the device is based on red or green, is the device based on red or green light technology? If yes, then the readings have a lower degree of accuracy on melanin skin, therefore disproportionately impacting health outcomes in patients of color. Any innovation on plans to address that racial inequity?
So we've done, all our clinical testing has been done on various skin colors, so all the skin colors, and we've shown consistent accuracy. The area where we monitor is in the armpit, which has a lot of capillaries coming around the ribs. So it's kind of, because we moved the device there for temperature, you're going to fall into that area for the optics as well. The chest itself is very hard to monitor on, but for us with the armpit, we've seen consistent results. Doesn't matter if it's dark or light skin. We are constantly obviously improving, working on improving our accuracy, but for now we're way below the FDA's requirements for accuracy, so we're happy with our go-to-market device.
Thank you. And then, yeah, obviously Vitals has a ton of different use cases and departments and ages I'm sure it works well on. Would you say there's a use case that has like kind of highest yield in terms of impact on outcomes?
Definitely post-operative.
Okay, great. And then those are the only 2 I see so far, and we do only have 1 minute left before we turn it over to our last presenter. But similarly, if you could give advice to other founders in this space, what would you recommend in terms of breaking into peds in a risk-averse world?
Sure, definitely the biggest, well, what we've seen as the most important factor is clinical data and validation. So we're at a point where we've had that validation in studies, but now everyone's looking for the first customer who's used it. So it's like the wall or the barrier is also, or the goalposts are always moved a little bit further. So I guess patience is one, and clinical validation is the second one that you need.
Awesome. And then, yeah, so keep putting any questions for Werner in the chat. And of course, you have time after our last pitch presenter to share. I'm going to turn it over to Tom and Tombot, who will be our last but not least presenter. And he'll share more about their robotic animals that transform how we cope with a number of issues like stress, anxiety, depression, and more. So Tom, take it away.
Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you everyone for being here. It's a real privilege to be joining 3 amazing companies in this session today. I'm Tom Stevens. I'm CEO and co-founder of Tombot, and this is Jenny. Jenny is a fully interactive robotic emotional support animal and will be the first to be both an FDA medical device and affordable. A little bit about my background. I've been in the high-tech industry for about 35 years. My 2 Tombot co-founders and I built a prior startup into one of the world's largest litigation automation companies. We were successfully acquired in 2011, which gave me the freedom to think about other things. Unfortunately, that same year, my mother gave me my new purpose when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia, and I had to take away her dog for safety reasons. I started looking around at substitutes for live animal companions, but didn't find anything that she liked or would respond to. So I started wondering if technology might play a role. That launched me on a multi-year research and education journey, which culminated in a master's degree from Stanford. And along the way, I learned that my mother's story isn't unique. Millions of people here in the US, tens of millions around the world, are not able to safely or practically care for a live animal due to a health adversity, and therefore miss out on the many mental and physical health benefits associated with the human-animal bond. We launched Tombot in 2017 to help those people. Our go-to-market customer is a senior with dementia. Senior with dementia suffer from something called behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia, or BPSD. Those symptoms include stress, anxiety, loneliness, depression, in my mother's case, hallucinations and violent anger. To manage these symptoms, doctors frequently prescribe psychotropic medications. And not only are these medications, do they turn seniors into zombies, they carry grave health risks, particularly from the antipsychotics. Additionally, over 80% of nursing home skilled nursing residents suffer from high impact chronic pain. And the go-to treatment for that are opioids. And if you've been reading the paper at all for the last 10 to 15 years, you'll know that opioids are extremely problematic, particularly for treating chronic pain. This is a very well-researched area. Over 150 peer-reviewed studies to date show that where a senior with dementia can form a robust emotional attachment to an object, traditionally a human baby doll or a stuffed animal, that senior gets a great deal of relief from their BPSD symptoms and a corresponding reduction in need for the psychotropics. The problem is, for most seniors, including my mother, they don't care for the traditional objects. Research on robotic animals show they significantly outperform the traditional objects and have the added benefit of reducing pain and the need for pain medications. The problem there are existing technology are either cheap children's mechanical toys or prohibitively expensive robots. In the lower right-hand corner of the screen is an excellent robot out of Japan called Paro, but it costs over $6,000. Most individuals cannot afford it and get the benefit they need from the emotional attachment. So you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with pediatrics? Well, it turns out that pediatric inpatients suffer from many of the same mental health challenges that seniors with dementia have. Looking at non-neonatal and non-maternal pediatrics, there are about 1.8 million stays in the US each year in the hospital. Average length of stay is about 4.2 days. 80% or so suffer from some traumatic stress reaction, almost a quarter of whom have that stress reaction persist after discharge and require some form of treatment. It's been well documented that stress and anxiety slow wound healing and potentially increase the length of hospital stays. And then lastly, pediatric inpatients that exhibit these mental health systems are far less likely to receive the opioids for the acute pain that they need. And for opioids for acute pain is a completely appropriate application. So we've done multiple rounds of customer studies with hundreds of participants. And what we've learned is they have a very strong preference for realism. Realism in appearance, realism in texture, but most importantly, realism in behaviors. Being a bunch of tech people, we didn't know how to do that. So we reached out to the animatronics community in Hollywood and teamed up with Jim Henson's Creature Shop to do all of our artistic services. And with their help, we're making what we believe to be the world's most realistic robotic animal, scientifically designed to stimulate emotional attachment to deliver the health benefits. And then once again, at an affordable price. A little bit about Jenny will be a class 2 510K exempt device. Inside her are a bunch of sensors. She can feel how and where she's being touched. She can tell the difference between a simple touch, a slow caress, a vigorous pet, and being held. We come with a smartphone app that allows for a number of initial configuration settings, including naming the robot. And then once named, the robot will only respond to that given name. She can feel herself being moved and a variety of other sensors to help her understand her environment and behave like a real dog. We have a two-pronged business model. We sell directly to the family members of the patients, but we'll also distribute through hospitals, school, home health facilities, assisted, or providers rather, assisted living facilities, treatment centers. We will be the most feature-rich product in our class, and at $449, we're less than 1/10 the price of our closest competitor, Paro. And that's even before insurance reimbursements. The leadership team has been together for quite a while. I've worked with Hank for 30 years and Jesse for 25. We have the technical, operations, and business experience to execute on our business plans. We've raised about $4 million to date, and we're raising a Series C preferred round of $5 million to fund various pre-production and production expenses, and then ultimately the working capital to manufacture our first 2,500 customer orders. So in summary, we're a very large opportunity with multiple multi-billion-dollar market segments that we can play with, any one of which will help deliver outlier returns to our investors. We do have institutional investors, including Wavemaker 360 Health, who is our lead. We have over 8,500 pre-order and waitlist customers, which include over 500 organizations such as hospitals, assisted living, skilled nursing facilities, and institutional research partners, including Children's Hospital of LA, LA County USC, Cleveland Clinic. And once again, we're raising $5 million currently. So we do hope you'll join us on this journey to help bring robots to those pediatrics desperately in need. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thanks for being willing to share your personal story associated as well. This is really awesome. I again invite the audience to ask questions in the chat and or just speak up and ask your own questions. But I guess one of my questions is, in the future, do you see there being room for like end user customizability, kind of like Build-A-Bear concept of like what type of coloring or naming or things like that?
Well, naming is customizable through our smartphone app, as well as a lot of other configurations which are about personality and making sure the personality of the robot is compatible with that particular user or patient's needs. I don't expect to do fully custom. You're not going to send us a photo of your recently deceased dog and have us produce one for you, but we will have other breeds and other species. Our next prototype will be a cat. One of the, while we're waiting for questions, probably the most commonly asked question from hospitals is, how do you clean it? So first of all, this is meant to be one robot per patient and inexpensive enough where that patient will be able to take it home with them after discharge. And from that, we'll be able to continue monitoring them as we are with our computer systems. But within the hospital, there are 3 different ways that the robot can be cleaned. The robot can be wetted, and so for dirt and debris, a simple washcloth with a mild detergent can do that. There's research out of the UK that shows that antimicrobial spray followed up with an antimicrobial wipe mitigates virtually all pathogens. However, we want to get to Spalding low-level criteria, and we're working with CHLA and Cleveland Clinic's infection control units to test hydrogen peroxide vapor, which is a big machine, and the whole robot will be inserted inside it and then gassed, and then that should mitigate any residual pathogens.
Awesome. And then there is a question in the chat. It says, is Jenny on the market now as a toy without the clearance?
Great question. So we are a pre-revenue company, pre-shipping. We're not shipping yet. Our pre-order and waitlist customers have been all organically acquired through the wonderful media coverage, which we didn't pay for, but they do like talking about our story. Our FDA relationship is 510(k) exempt. And so it's simply FDA registration. So it's a function of us going through the paperwork, but also simply being GMP, good manufacturing practices, and ISO 13485 compliant. And we will have that compliance well in advance of day one. I'll jump in on the next one. It looks like, have you adapted your idea from the original vision with the benefit of hindsight? What would you have done differently? So I set out to solve my mother's problem. My mom was devastated when I took her dog away. I didn't know that this was a thing. I didn't realize there were so many people that had this same need of wanting to have an animal but not being able to care for them. And I never anticipated this being in the hospital environment. So our original vision was just to produce something for my mother, and then ultimately expand that as I learned that there's a business opportunity for seniors with dementia. However, the hospital environment is actually the place where we can have the greatest impact, particularly in the environment of COVID, where there are severe restrictions on hospital visitation. So loneliness and isolation are huge problems for hospital inpatients. Even when live animal visits are allowed to return to a hospital, there will still remain places within the hospital that they're not allowed to go. Any place of high infection, labor and delivery, ICU, as well as the emergency room and other particularly sensitive environments. So we can have sort of a cross-patient application. And so what I would have done differently is perhaps been a little bit more vigorous initially by studying these other populations. However, we want to be very data-driven, very science-oriented. We developed Jenny specifically to meet the needs of seniors with dementia. And with the help of Children's Hospital of LA and others, we are formally studying these other environments to make sure the features and the functionality of our robot are really providing the same kind of medical benefit that they are for seniors with dementia.
Thank you. I'm going to turn over the session back to John. I actually have to drop for another call shortly, but John, I'll let you turn it over for networking. And Tom and folks in the chat, feel free to continue to answer questions and further discuss TomBot.
Well,
no problem, Kate.
Werner, I can answer your question real quickly if that's appropriate. Our next major implementation will be adding more sensors. We're not talking publicly about what those sensors might be, but it's basically to expand the desirability of our robot to a more cognitively intact customer population. So seniors living alone, as an example, adults with anxiety, major depressive disorder, PTSD, chemical dependency. We believe that the robot is going to have to perform even more realistically to satisfy the needs of those. And so we'll expand the sensors and the capabilities of the robot to expand on the realism performance.
Great. I do see that we have another question in the chat. I'll read it aloud for those that are watching the recording. Many hospitals have restrictions on buying products with plush materials. If they can purchase a plush product, the child needs to take it home. How did you solve that problem considering the price of your product?
Thank you for that question. So as I mentioned at the outset, cleaning the product is a really key thing. But more importantly, if this product is not going to be shared between patients, but rather it's for the patient's use and then for them to take home with them, then that mitigates that requirement. However, there may be situations where it is a therapeutic tool used by Child Life as an example, and we need to be able to thoroughly clean it between, and that's where hydrogen peroxide vapor comes in. But the purpose of our price point, which is $449 before insurance reimbursements, is to be such that this is affordable to give to a patient for their use an entire stay in the hospital, and then allow them to take it home with them to keep, much like a pair of crutches or a commode or something that's inserted in their body.
Thank you for sharing that. Definitely the product being for a patient individualized makes it more healthy as well. It's not being shared by other patients. So that allows for it to be more safe for the pediatric patient. Thank you for answering that. If anyone has any final questions, we're opening the final Q&A for any of the 4 startups. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask them. Feel free to unmute and ask your question, or feel free to type it in the chat. We'll give a couple of minutes to think of those questions and to type them in. While we wait for those, I know many individuals, whenever they're working on their startup early stage, they have difficulties with finding venture capitalists, investors, funding. Can you share some of your experiences on that process? How were you able to achieve that? What were the main challenges with finding funding for your company? And anyone like to?
I can start.
Sure, go ahead, Ashley.
So definitely a challenge for us. We started our company while I was in undergrad. So we had no network. And when people said, "Oh, just ask some of your friends," with student debt, we were worth negative money. So there was not a lot to go around with our personal networks. So we really took advantage of all the networking opportunities that we could find and plugged into all of the different startup communities that we could in any geographical location that we kind of had a relationship to. So if anybody else is looking to raise capital, I'd say getting yourself out there, networking, always be pitching, very helpful, at least for us, and making sure that you always have some kind of way to be promoting yourself.
That's great advice.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, we did the same, but one thing we were cognizant of is picking the right events and the right programs to participate in, because all the programs aren't created the same or equal. So that was an important part for us to focus on.
Thanks for sharing that. I did get an individual chat message that says to Tombot, if the patient sleeps, will the dog automatically stop barking? And can you set that from your phone?
Yes, it will. Thank you for the question. I'm actually constantly stimulating her so she won't go to sleep. Like your smartphone, the timeout or sleep mode is configurable. And one of the things that we don't want to do is burn up a lot of battery when someone's really not interacting with the robot. So a couple things there. First of all, we come with a light sensor, so it's dark in the room. The robot knows not to bark. But secondly, the robot will go to sleep automatically. It's still alert. The sensors are all still alert, but it's not moving. It's not exhibiting any behavior at that time. But it can easily be reawakened on a moment's notice.
Thank you for that. Awesome. All right, a big virtual round of applause to all 4 of you for having a very talented startup with a very innovative product. Thanks for sharing your presentations today. I'm very glad to hear that you were able to utilize Glendale's CHLA KidsX Digital Health Accelerator to advance your companies and work on making your innovative products available to pediatric patients. If you are or know of an early stage digital health company, Glendale's CHLA KidsX Accelerator has a 13-week program where entrepreneurs work closely with startups to provide mentorship and learning, determine the best product market fit, and allow for product feedback from parents and kids. You can learn more about the City of Glendale's partnership with KidsX at kidsx.health, which I will include in the chat. In addition to KidsX, the City of Glendale provides various resources to the tech community to ensure an ecosystem of innovation and prosperity in the region. One of these resources being this monthly Tech on Tap, which we are all participating in right now. This coming September, we have our famous Glendale Tech Week happening from September 20 to the 23rd. During this week, startups and individuals will have multiple opportunities to meet and network with VCs, funders, angel investors, and tech professionals. If you'd like to learn more about these opportunities, please visit GlendaleTechWeek.com. I will also include that in the chat below. Again, thank you all for joining today's Tech on Tap event, and thank you to all 4 of our presenters.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.